Eliza Foster clutched her burning, feverish baby to her chest as the last shopkeeper in Willow Creek slammed his door in her face, leaving her alone in the dying light of the dusty Wyoming street. It was 1885, and being a widow with a sick child and no money meant nothing but closed doors and cold stares. "Please," she whispered, though no one remained to hear her plea. 6-month-old Sarah whimpered weakly against her shoulder, her tiny body radiating an unnatural heat that terrified Eliza to her core. 3 days of fever, and not a single soul in town willing to help or extend credit for medicine. Eliza sank onto the rough wooden boardwalk, cradling her daughter while fighting back tears. The setting sun cast long shadows down the main street, and soon the chill of the September evening would settle in. She had to get Sarah back to their small cabin on the outskirts of town before nightfall. The thundering of hooves made her look up. A rider approached, silhouetted against the orange-gold sunset, dust billowing behind him. Vaughn Fletcher pulled his horse to a stop when he spotted the woman and child huddled on the boardwalk. He'd been away for 2 weeks, driving cattle to the neighboring town for his employer, the Double R Ranch. "Madam," he called, dismounting in one fluid motion. His tall frame cast a shadow over Eliza as he approached, spurs jingling with each step. "You all right there?" Eliza looked up at the stranger. Tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a clear summer sky. His dark hair curled beneath the brim of his hat, and a layer of trail dust covered his denim and leather clothes. "My baby's sick," she said, her voice cracking. 3 days with fever and no one will help us. I've tried everyone in town." Vaughn crouched down, his eyes moving from Eliza's tear-stained face to the flushed infant in her arms. "May I?" he asked, holding out his hands. Eliza hesitated before allowing him to touch Sarah's forehead. His calloused hand felt rough against the baby's delicate skin, but his touch was gentle. "She's burning up something fierce," he said, concern etching deep lines around his eyes. "Where's your husband, madam?" "Dead," Eliza replied flatly. "Pneumonia took him last winter before Sarah was born." Vaughn's expression softened. "I'm mighty sorry to hear that." He stood, adjusting his hat. "Name's Vaughn Fletcher. I work for the Double R. Let me help you get home and we'll figure something out for your little one." Eliza studied him warily. "Why would you help when no one else will?" "I can't pay you." A small smile tugged at his lips. "My ma raised me better than to leave a woman and child out in the cold. Money's got nothing to do with it." He helped Eliza to her feet and led her to his horse. "This is Dusty. He's gentle as they come." With surprising tenderness for a man with such rough hands, he helped Eliza mount while still cradling Sarah, then swung up behind her. "Where to, Mrs. Foster?" "Eliza Foster. We have a small cabin about a mile east of town." Vaughn clicked his tongue and Dusty set off at an easy walk. The warmth of the cowboy's chest against Eliza's back was oddly comforting after the day of rejection she'd endured. "The baby needs a doctor," Vaughn said as they rode. "Doc Harris in town wouldn't help," Eliza laughed bitterly. "Doc Harris said he'd see us when I could pay. I offered to work it off, but he refused." She paused. "My husband left debts. People have long memories when it comes to money." Vaughn's jaw tightened. "That ain't right. A child shouldn't suffer for that." They arrived at Eliza's cabin just as darkness fell. It was a small, one-room structure with a sagging porch and patched roof. A few chickens scattered as they approached, and a scraggly garden showed signs of careful tending despite the harsh conditions. Vaughn helped Eliza dismount and followed her inside. The cabin was spare but clean, with a small stove, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed in one corner, and a handmade cradle nearby. A faded quilt provided the only spot of color in the room. Eliza laid Sarah in her cradle and lit a lamp. In its warm glow, Vaughn could see the dark circles under her eyes and the hollows in her cheeks. She was pretty despite her exhaustion, with chestnut hair pulled back in a simple braid and green eyes that held both weariness and determination. "When did she eat last?" Vaughn asked, removing his hat. "This morning. She won't take much." Eliza dipped a cloth in water and placed it on Sarah's forehead. The baby whimpered but didn't open her eyes. Vaughn stood silent for a moment, considering. "There's a good doctor in Clearwater. I've seen him work miracles with sick youngsters. Clearwater, that's nearly 30 miles from here. I could make it there and back with the doctor by morning if I ride hard tonight." His voice was steady, matter of fact. Eliza stared at him. "Why would you do that? You don't even know us." Vaughn shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "I had a little sister once. Fever took her when she was about your Sarah's age. No doctor for 50 miles. He looked away. "I was only 12, but I still wonder if I could have done something." Eliza's expression softened. "I'm sorry about your sister, Mr. Fletcher, but I can't let you ride all night for us. It's too much to ask." "You didn't ask. I offered." He settled his hat back on his head. "Do you have neighbors who could stay with you while I'm gone?" "The Williams family is about a quarter-mile down the road, but I'll stop there on my way out." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Is there anything you need before I go? Food? Water?" Eliza shook her head, overwhelmed by this stranger's kindness. Vaughn nodded once. "I'll be back by dawn with the doctor. Just keep her cool as best you can." Before Eliza could protest further, he was gone. She heard him mount his horse, and then the sound of hoofbeats faded into the night. Eliza sat beside Sarah's cradle, refreshing the cool cloth on her forehead and praying this cowboy would keep his word when so many others had failed her. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. Ellen Williams stood there with a basket in her arms. "That cowboy said your baby was sick. I've brought some willow bark tea and broth." For the first time that day, Eliza felt a small spark of hope. Vaughn pushed Dusty harder than he'd ever pushed the gelding before. The trail to Clearwater was rough, crossing 2 streams and winding through pine forests and open range. He knew every mile of it from his years working cattle, but never had he attempted to cover it in a single night. The moon rose, casting silver light across the landscape. He thought of Eliza Foster's face, the mix of desperation and pride he'd seen there. And the baby, so small and vulnerable. He'd meant what he said about his sister, though he rarely spoke of Lily to anyone. The memory of her still ached after all these years. 4 hours into his ride, Dusty stumbled on a hidden rock, nearly sending Vaughn flying. He pulled up, aware that pushing the horse to exhaustion wouldn't help anyone. "Easy, boy," he murmured, dismounting to check Dusty's leg. Finding no injury, he gave the horse a brief rest, leading him to a small stream to drink. "We've still got a ways to go." After 10 minutes, they set off again at a steady lope. Vaughn's thoughts returned to Eliza. He'd noticed no wedding ring on her finger, though that wasn't unusual for a poor widow who might have had to sell it. Her cabin showed signs of struggle, but also of someone fighting hard to make a home. The garden, though small, was well tended. The chickens looked healthy. She was doing her best with what she had. By midnight, Vaughn reached the outskirts of Clearwater. The town was mostly dark, with only the saloon still showing lights. He rode directly to Dr. Mitchell's house, a 2-story building at the edge of town. Vaughn pounded on the door, not caring about the late hour. After several minutes, a light appeared in an upstairs window, and soon the doctor opened the door, a lantern in hand and suspenders hanging loose over his nightshirt. "What in tarnation?" Dr. Mitchell began, then recognized the cowboy. "Fletcher, what brings you here at this ungodly hour?" There's a baby with high fever in Willow Creek. Mother's a widow with no money. No one in town would help them. Dr. Mitchell frowned. Willow Creek, that's a fair distance. I can get you there by morning. The child may not last another day without help. The doctor studied Vaughn's face, then nodded. Give me 10 minutes to dress and gather my things. While the doctor prepared, Vaughn went to the livery stable where he woke the stable master and arranged for a fresh horse. He transferred his saddle to a sturdy bay mare, leaving Dusty to rest and recover. When Dr. Mitchell emerged with his medical bag, Vaughn was waiting with both horses ready. Been a while since I rode all night for a patient, the doctor said as they set off, but a sick baby won't wait for convenience. They rode hard through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. The doctor asked questions about the child's symptoms, and Vaughn relayed what little he knew. Sounds like it could be several things, Dr. Mitchell said. Won't know until I see her. As they rode, Vaughn found himself speaking more than usual, telling the doctor about Eliza's situation and the town's refusal to help. Some folks forget what it means to be neighbors, the doctor remarked. Though I've seen it before. Hard times make people protect their own interests. Still ain't right, Vaughn replied. A baby shouldn't suffer for adult problems. Dawn was breaking as they approached Eliza's cabin. Light already glowed from the windows and smoke curled from the chimney. Vaughn's heart quickened at the sight. He hoped they weren't too late. Eliza opened the door before they could knock, her face pale with exhaustion but her eyes brightening when she saw Vaughn wasn't alone. You came back, she whispered. Said I would, he replied simply, helping Dr. Mitchell dismount. Madam, I'm Dr. Mitchell from Clearwater. This young man tells me your baby is ill. Eliza led them inside, where Sarah lay in her cradle, her face flushed and her breathing labored. Ellen Williams sat nearby, looking up with relief when the doctor entered. She's worse, Eliza said. The fever rose during the night, doctor. Mitchell went immediately to the baby, opening his bag and beginning his examination. Vaughn stood awkwardly by the door, his hat in his hands, suddenly aware of his dust-covered clothes and stubbled face. You must be exhausted, Eliza said, approaching him. Please sit. There's coffee on the stove. Vaughn accepted a cup gratefully, watching as Dr. Mitchell worked. The doctor listened to the baby's chest, felt her glands, and checked her throat. It's influenza, most likely, he announced after several minutes. Serious, but not hopeless. We need to bring the fever down and make sure she takes fluids. He prepared a medicinal powder, mixing it with water. This will help with the fever. She needs small amounts every few hours. I'll also leave you with willow bark for tea and instructions for a steam tent to ease her breathing. Relief washed over Eliza's face. She took the medicine and carefully administered it to Sarah, who fussed weakly but swallowed it. Will she recover? Eliza asked, her voice trembling. She's young but strong, the doctor replied. With proper care, yes, I believe she will. Ellen Williams offered to bring her husband later to help with chores, then departed for her own home. Dr. Mitchell continued giving Eliza detailed instructions while Vaughn finished his coffee, fighting to keep his eyes open after the sleepless night. When the doctor was satisfied that Eliza understood the treatment, he turned to Vaughn. I should head back to Clearwater. My other patients will be waiting. Vaughn nodded. I'll see you back, Doc. Eliza looked up in alarm. You can't ride back now. You haven't slept at all, doctor. Mitchell chuckled. The lady's right, Fletcher. You're dead on your feet. I can find my way back to Clearwater. You get some rest before you fall out of the saddle. Vaughn wanted to protest, but exhaustion was catching up with him fast. If you're sure, Doc. Positive. You did your good deed getting me here. Now rest. The doctor packed his bag and prepared to leave. I'll check on the child again in a week. Until then, follow my instructions carefully, Mrs. Foster." "Thank you, Doctor," Eliza said earnestly. "And about payment," Dr. Mitchell waved her off. "Any friend of Fletcher's is a friend of mine. We'll sort that out later." After the doctor departed, Eliza turned to Vaughn. "You should lie down. You can take my bed for a few hours." Vaughn shook his head. "The floor's fine. I've slept on worse." Despite his protest, his eyes were already closing as he settled onto the threadbare rug near the stove. The last thing he remembered was Eliza draping a blanket over him. He woke to the smell of cooking and the soft sound of humming. For a moment, he was disoriented, then remembered where he was. The light coming through the windows told him it was late afternoon. Vaughn sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Eliza was at the stove, stirring something in a pot while softly singing to Sarah, who was cradled in one arm. "How is she?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. Eliza turned, a small smile lighting her face. "Better. The fever's down and she took some milk a little while ago." She shifted Sarah so Vaughn could see. The baby's cheeks were still flushed, but her eyes were open, bright with awareness. "That's good to hear." He stood, stretching his stiff muscles. "I should get going. My boss will be wondering where I disappeared to." "Not before you eat," Eliza insisted. "It's just beans and cornbread, but it's the least I can offer for what you've done." Vaughn hesitated, then nodded. "Much obliged." They sat at the small table, Sarah nestled in a makeshift sling across Eliza's chest. The meal was simple but satisfying, and Vaughn found himself enjoying the domestic scene more than he cared to admit. "Why did you really help us?" Eliza asked suddenly. "The truth, Mr. Fletcher." Vaughn set down his spoon. "I told you about my sister." "Yes, but there must be more. Most men wouldn't ride all night for strangers." He considered her words. "Maybe I'm not most men," he said finally. "Or maybe I'm just tired of seeing good people suffer while others turn away." He paused. "When I saw you holding your baby in that street with everyone's doors closed against you, it just weren't right." Eliza's eyes softened. "Well, whatever your reasons, we're in your debt. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Seeing the little one getting better is payment enough." Vaughn finished his meal and stood. "I should check on my horse and head back to the ranch." Outside, Vaughn found the bay mare well rested and ready to travel. As he saddled her, Eliza came out with Sarah bundled in a blanket. "Will you come back?" she asked. "To see how Sarah's doing." Vaughn tightened the saddle cinch. "If you wouldn't mind the company." "I wouldn't mind at all." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a quiet understanding that transcended words. "Then I'll be by in a few days," he promised, mounting up. With a tip of his hat, he rode away, but his thoughts remained with the young widow and her baby. True to his word, Vaughn returned 3 days later. He found Eliza in her garden, Sarah sleeping peacefully in a basket nearby. The baby's color had improved dramatically, and she was breathing easily. "She looks much better," he observed, crouching beside the basket. Eliza smiled, wiping soil from her hands. "Thanks to you and Dr. Mitchell. She's taking milk properly now and sleeping through the night again." "I brought a few things," Vaughn said, somewhat embarrassed as he handed over a small sack. "Just some coffee and sugar and a bit of beef from the ranch." Eliza accepted the gifts with gratitude that made Vaughn uncomfortable with its sincerity. He wasn't used to being thanked so earnestly. "Would you stay for supper?" she asked. "I could make a stew with this beef." Vaughn did stay and found himself returning regularly over the next few weeks. Sometimes he brought small gifts, a jar of honey, a new blanket for Sarah, a book he thought Eliza might enjoy. Other times, he simply brought his company and his willing hands, fixing her leaking roof or chopping firewood for the coming winter. Each visit deepened his admiration for Eliza. She never complained about her circumstances. instead focusing on the small joys each day brought. She read to Sarah, sang while she worked, and treated Vaughn's visits like treasured occasions rather than charity. For Eliza, Vaughn's visits became the bright spots in her week. She found herself watching the trail for his approach, her heart lifting at the sight of him. It had been so long since anyone had shown her kindness without expecting something in return. As autumn progressed, Vaughn arrived one evening with a wagon rather than on horseback. "Thought you might like to come to the harvest dance in town tomorrow," he said hesitantly. "Folks from all around will be there. Good music, good food." Eliza's smile faded. "I don't think I'd be welcome. People in town have made their feelings about me quite clear." "Things are different now," Vaughn insisted. "Word's gotten around about how Doc Mitchell came all the way from Clearwater for your baby, and how He trailed off, suddenly self-conscious. "How you rode all night to bring him," Eliza finished softly. "Some folks are feeling mighty ashamed of themselves," Vaughn continued. "Mrs. Williams has been talking too, telling everyone how strong you've been, raising Sarah alone and asking for nothing." Eliza considered his words. "I don't have anything suitable to wear," Vaughn grinned. "Thought you might say that." He reached into the wagon and pulled out a wrapped package. "Mrs. Thornton at the ranch helped me pick it out. She's about your size." Inside was a simple but pretty blue dress, modest but far nicer than anything Eliza had worn since before her husband died. "Vaughn, I can't accept this," she protested, though her fingers lingered on the soft fabric. "Sure you can. Consider it a thank you for all those meals you've fed me." The next evening, Vaughn arrived with the wagon freshly cleaned, wearing his best shirt and a nervous expression. His breath caught when Eliza emerged from the cabin in the blue dress, her hair loosely pinned up with a few tendrils framing her face. "You look beautiful," he said honestly. Eliza blushed. "It feels strange to dress up after so long." Mrs. Williams had offered to watch Sarah for the evening, so after dropping the baby off, they headed to town. Eliza grew quiet as they approached, tension evident in her posture. "It'll be all right," Vaughn assured her, reaching over to briefly cover her hand with his. The town hall was decorated with autumn leaves and harvest bounty. Lanterns cast a warm glow over the gathering, and a small band played lively tunes. As Vaughn helped Eliza down from the wagon, he noticed several people watching them. "Mrs. Foster," called a voice, and they turned to see the mercantile owner, Mr. Jenkins, approaching with his wife. "It's good to see you in town. How's your little one?" "Much better, thank you," Eliza replied cautiously. "I'm glad to hear it." Jenkins cleared his throat awkwardly. "I want to apologize for how things were handled. It wasn't right." Before Eliza could respond, others approached with similar sentiments. Doc Harris looked particularly sheepish as he admitted he should have helped regardless of payment. "Your Mr. Fletcher here taught us all a lesson in what being a neighbor means," said the preacher's wife. "Sometimes it takes a newcomer to remind us of our duties to one another." Throughout the evening, Eliza found herself welcomed rather than shunned. Women who had previously ignored her now invited her to join their sewing circle. The banker discreetly mentioned that her husband's debts might be renegotiated. "See, told you things were different," Vaughn said as they shared a plate of pie. "Because of you," Eliza replied. "You changed how they see me." "No, you did that yourself. I just helped them notice." When the band played a waltz, Vaughn held out his hand. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Foster?" Eliza hesitated. "It's been years since I danced." "Then it's high time you did again." She placed her hand in his and allowed him to lead her to the dance floor. Vaughn wasn't the most graceful dancer, but his strong arms held her securely as they moved to the music. Eliza found herself relaxing, enjoying the simple pleasure of human contact after so much isolation. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "For everything these past weeks." Vaughn's blue eyes met hers. "I should be thanking you." "For what?" "For giving me somewhere to belong." His voice was low, meant only for her. "These visits to your cabin, they've meant more to me than you know." The waltz ended, but they remained standing close, something unspoken passing between them. Before Eliza could respond, they were interrupted by the ranch owner, requesting a word with Vaughn. "Go ahead," Eliza encouraged. "I'll wait here." As she watched him walk away, Eliza realized with startling clarity that she was falling in love with the quiet cowboy who had ridden through the night to save her daughter. The harvest dance marked a turning point. Eliza was no longer an outcast in Willow Creek, and as winter approached, she found the community rallying around her in ways she hadn't experienced since before her husband's death. The general store extended credit. Neighbors shared winter preserves, and even Doc Harris came to check on Sarah without being asked. Vaughn continued his visits, though less frequently as winter work at the ranch demanded more of his time. Each absence felt longer to Eliza, each return more precious. One snowy December evening, he arrived with a small Christmas tree strapped to his saddle and a wooden toy for Sarah, who was now nearly 9 months old and thriving. "It's not much," he said, almost shyly, as he set up the tree in the corner of the cabin. "It's perfect," Eliza replied, watching as Sarah crawled toward the pine boughs with fascination. After a simple supper, they sat by the fire, Sarah dozing in Eliza's arms. The cabin was warm and fragrant with the scent of pine and the stew they'd shared. "I've been thinking," Vaughn said after a comfortable silence. "I've saved a fair bit from my wages these past few years, enough to put a down payment on a small spread." Eliza's heart quickened. "You're buying land." "Thinking on it. There's a nice piece available about 3 miles north of here. Good water, decent grazing. You'd be leaving the double R," Vaughn nodded. "It's time. I've been a hired hand long enough." He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "Thing is, a man needs a family to build a proper home." Eliza's breath caught as he reached for her free hand. "I know it hasn't been that long since we met, but I feel like I've known you forever, Eliza. You and Sarah. You've become everything to me." His voice was steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I'm asking if you'd consider being my wife, if you'd let me be a father to Sarah and maybe, in time, give her brothers and sisters to grow up with." Tears welled in Eliza's eyes. "Vaughn, I know I'm just a cowboy without much to my name yet, but I promise I'd work every day to give you and Sarah a good life." Eliza placed her hand against his cheek. "The day you found us on that boardwalk, I had nothing but my daughter and my pride. I'd prayed for help, but I never expected it to come in the form of a man who would change our lives so completely." She smiled through her tears. "Yes, Vaughn Fletcher, I'll marry you." His face lit with joy as he leaned forward to kiss her, gentle but full of promise. Sarah stirred between them, reaching up to pat Vaughn's chin with a sleepy smile. They were married on New Year's Day, 1886, with the whole town attending. Dr. Mitchell rode from Clearwater for the occasion, proudly telling anyone who would listen how Vaughn had fetched him that fateful night. By spring, they had moved to their new land, a modest ranch they named Triple Heart. The small house Vaughn built had large windows to let in the light Eliza loved and a wide porch where Sarah took her first steps. As the years passed, their family grew. A son, James, arrived the following winter, followed by twin girls, Mary and Margaret, 2 years later. Sarah grew into a strong, compassionate young woman who remembered nothing of her early brush with death, but knew every detail of the night a cowboy had ridden through darkness to save her life. On their 10th anniversary, Eliza found Vaughn on the porch, watching the sunset over their thriving ranch. "Any regrets?" she asked, slipping her arm around his waist. He pulled her close. "Only that I didn't find you sooner." Eliza rested her head against his shoulder. Everything happened exactly when it was meant to. From inside came the sound of children's laughter as Sarah told her siblings a story. Their voices, healthy and strong, were the sweetest music Eliza could imagine. "Remember that night you rode for the doctor?" she asked. "I keep thinking how one decision changed everything, if you hadn't stopped when you saw us." "I couldn't have ridden past," Vaughn said simply. "Something told me my whole life was sitting there on that boardwalk, waiting for me to find it." He kissed her forehead. "And I was right." As twilight deepened around their home, Eliza reflected on how a single act of kindness had grown into a lifetime of love. The cowboy who rode through the night had found far more than a doctor. He had found his heart's true home.